Alright, howdy. Welcome to something new I'm going to do here on the channel. I call it Snake Stories. And it's mostly just going to be kind of amusing to me, anecdotes or profiles of some of my gear. I have a lot of guitars, some of which have some cool stories behind them. Some are just guitars, but I get asked a lot of time, hey, what's the story with that one? What is it? Where'd you get it? So forth. So I'm going to start with the one that started it all. This is a 1983 made in Japan Squire. This is what they call the SQ series. It's got the SQ serial number. It's meant to be not a copy exactly, but it's inspired by the USA Strats in the late 70s, early 80s, in that it's got the 3 bolts neck plate, and it's got a micro adjust. But if you're familiar with the 70s ones, you'll know that on those, this is a machine screw into an insert on the neck. On this one, it's just a 3rd wood screw, and this micro adjust is smaller than the rest. Other than that, it is very similar to 70s Strats that I've owned since. The body on these is sometimes incorrectly referred to as basswood. It is not basswood. It is in fact sen wood, which is a Japanese form of ash. It's not a super heavy guitar for ash. In fact, it's probably 7.5, maybe 8 pounds. With actually really nice contours compared to a lot of the 70s and early 80s guitars that I've had. They're much more kind of blocky in through here. But it's the full thickness body. It's not thin like some later Squires. I hear all the time that these made in Japan Squires are every bit as good as US guitars. This one's actually, I think, a little better than a lot of US ones that I've made, just because it's not so heavy, but it plays great. The neck was always great on it. This one has had some upgrades. The original logo got sanded off, and I put one back on. It's not quite the same though, because the original one had less gold on it, but that's as close as I could get. The original tuners were made in Japan. They say Japan Fender Schaller mini replicas. I have put on here some Goto locking tuners, which are a direct drop-in. These work really well for me, and they've just dropped right in. It's had a new nut. This is a tusk that's in here now. The neck has been completely refretted. The original frets, it's a 7 1/4, I think 7 1/4. I always get confused. Radius with vintage style frets, which are small, they're thin, and they're short. And I had those frets on here for a long time. A lot of people can't stand the vintage fret wire, but to me, it's kind of home. So I'm used to it. But the guitar was partly refretted in the 80s from some damage that I did with stainless steel strings, which never use stainless steel strings on your guitar. It will absolutely kill the guitar. The frets, if you have nickel steel frets, it will just eat through them. It's kind of like lifetime brake pads on your car. The pads won't ever wear out, but everything that they touch will, and that's not covered under the warranty. Anyway, after playing this guitar nearly constantly for 35 years, I refretted it myself a couple years ago, and I don't remember if the fretboard was this nicely rounded before. It's super comfortable. I don't know if I've done that through playing it. I certainly wasn't real careful about, scraping it or scratching it when I redid the frets. But I did some Jescar, they're kind of medium jumbo frets that came pre-bent, because I don't have a fret bender, I have a press. But they came pre-bent in a 7 and whatever this is, radius, 7.5, 7.25. And so it's got new frets on it. I like it real well. The almost nothing but the neck itself and the body is original on this guitar. Partly because I started out wanting to mod it, because when I got it in 83 or 84, they were just single coil pickups in this, just like a 70s Strat. You couldn't at that time, for another year or so I think, get a Fender with a humbucker, a Strat with a humbucker in the bridge position, let alone bridge and neck. And I picked a Strat because a lot of my favorite players at the time, Ritchie Blackmore, Jeff Beck, played a Strat. But what I discovered when I got it was that I was trying to play a lot of hard rock and metal. And I mean, we'd play everything in a single set back then, cover bands from, Creedence Clearwater Revival and the Byrds to Rat and Scorpions. And, for the mellower stuff, the single coils were fine. For the harder stuff, they just weren't cutting it. Especially because I was the only guitar player in the band. It was just me, a bass player, and the drummer. And when you're trying to hold down that much sonic real estate, single coils just kind of come up short live. I myself cut it up here to put a humbucker in the bridge position almost immediately. And then when I had some friends of mine that owned a music shop in town fix the frets in 85, I had them route out for a neck humbucker as well. And I have changed the configuration back and forth between HSH and singles a couple times since, but it always kind of comes back. I'm just going to go through all the features before I play it any here. The bridge originally was a pretty faithful reproduction of a 70s Strat bridge, which is to say not good. The bridge plate was cast, the block was pot metal, and the saddles were cast zinc. So at some point or other, and I had at least one tremolo arm break on me trying to do Ritchie Blackmore style kind of, up and down kind of gymnastics on it, for which the repair guy actually kind of yelled at me. But also a couple of years ago, I got another guitar, which I'll show here in another video, which is a Suhr Classic. It's a 2008, and it comes with a Wilkinson VG300 bridge, which is a 2-point knife edge pivot. And after playing that guitar, I had replaced the original bridge on this with a better quality bridge that had steel saddles and steel plate and a brass block. And it was better, but after I got used to playing that Suhr with the Wilkinson on it, I was just spoiled forever on how easy that bridge was to use. So a couple years ago, same time that I did the refret on this, I also converted this to a 2-point bridge. This is a Wilkinson, or this is a Goto 510T, I think is what it's called, but Wilkinson and Goto get kind of branded cross, cross company for the similar kind of bridges. This one's a Goto, and it's a 500 or 510, which you got the series of the bridge, and then you've got the spacing and the material it's made of, the finish. This the other thing about this was that when I went to put this bridge in, the tremolo block on a Strat ends right up against the edge of the cavity in here where it screws into. This one, because it has a push-in kind of mount, has a wider kind of a ferrule in there that it attaches to, and it would not fit in the cavity that I had. So you can't see it probably, but down in here I had to kind of carve away the shelf that sits over this cavity. I don't know if you can see in there, but there's a shelf within the cavity itself, and this just didn't quite clear. So as smoothly as I could, I used a drill press and kind of carved out a semicircular home for it so that it would fit in there. And then the pickups, this is actually the only stock electronics on the entire guitar. It is the original Squier 5, Hot 5, Red 5, they used to call it, I forget what they call it. But it was specifically a Squier model pickup that is, it's Alnico. It's Alnico 5. So a lot of the later ones were bar ceramic. And the bridge pickup and neck pickup, I'd like to say there was a lot of thought that went into what goes in those. But really it is just a matter of what I could find in my local music store in the mid-80s, because of course there was no eBay then, there was no Musician's Friend, there was none of that in 84, 85 when I did these. This pickup here is a Seymour Duncan 59, and it's from before they used to label what they were. So now you get it and it says SH1, 59B, 59N. This one may say 59 on it. It's one of the older ink stamp stickers because I've had it that long. The middle position, as I said, is a stock pickup. Obviously they didn't come with this paint job on them, somebody added that. And then when I switched it HSH, I liked this 59 in the bridge. It was a good output level, but I went down to the store to get another humbucker, and they didn't have another 59. So I bought what they did have, which was one they called the Mag back then, and it's flat. There's no stagger of the pole pieces. They have one now called the Stag Mag that's a similar idea, but this is just called the Mag. And what it is basically is 2 rows of slug pole pieces, magnet pole pieces. There's no bar magnet in this like there is in the 59 or most humbuckers. These are 2 rows of magnetic pole pieces. The idea being to give you a very Strat kind of sound, and it does that. I believe this one is able to be split, this one is not, but I don't have a split attached to this. One thing I do is any Strat I have, I make this bottom tone knob work on the bridge pickup. Depending on what I'm doing that day, I might do bridge and then middle and then no tone for the neck, or I might do bridge and middle and neck. But I think even when you have, I've got a no-load pot on here right now, which is just an accident of what I had. Always 250s, even with the humbuckers. I was going somewhere with that. Where was I going? Anyway, it makes a very stratty sound. It's a little bit hotter than the 59. but you'll hear that. But the goal for this was that it was supposed to still, have a Stratty kind of sound to it. So even though you'll hear it on the, this is a cleanish, overdriven-y kind of amp I've got it into here. You'll hear kind of what's going on, but so you hear it still kind of switches a little dirty. I keep that middle one pretty low because the only thing I use it for. So I use that for that kind of middle position. Every once in a great while, something will make me want to use this middle position by itself. But it's a very mellow sounding pickup, as you can tell, and it is really low. Then I've got and then of course the full neck up position. Even though it's got a humbucker in it. It still sounds very Stratty, but this gave me more having this tone in the circuit, even if I've got it on 10, it actually does make a difference in the sound. And if I'm somewhere that this is just too bright, I can take it off down to about 6 or 7. Mostly I like it full up. And then the tremolo on this. I'm not a dive bomber. I mostly just like to do a little bit of shimmering like that. But it stays in tune beautifully. I never really had a lot of trouble with that with this guitar because I would graphite up the nut, and then I put these round string trees in here and took the one on the D and the G off altogether because it just causes problems. And this one I switched to a round one and I had to whale it up. So if I can figure out how to get to a still very, Strat-like, but got enough power behind it that if I want to play something super heavy, it'll do it. So I can clean it up and have something nice and mellow sounding. Or I can have something super sludgy. So this guitar has been called on, like I said, to do just about everything. That's it, Black Strat, guitar number 1, still with me today, more than 35 years after I bought it. So that's it for Snake Stories number 1. Whether you like it or not, I'll do another one, probably within the next week, we'll see. But I have a lot of guitars here I can talk about, so, and like I said, some of them have some good stories. In fact, while I'm still here, one of the great stories about this guitar, aside from all it's been through, is that I actually ran over this guitar with my car. It was a 76 woody-sided Pacer wagon, and I was on my way to a gig, and this was the last piece to get loaded on because I didn't want to get crushed under the PA gear and the drums and things like that. And so it was sitting on top in its plastic vacuum formed fender case. You probably know the ones with the great big Fender logo all the way up the top. And I pulled out of a driveway that was a little bump that went into the road, and I noticed that after I bumped into the road, the car didn't want to drive backward very much, so I stepped on it, and it went. It still felt like it was something wrong with it, so I was just thinking, man, I hope this piece of crap doesn't break down during the gig and it gets me back home. But I noticed there was like a skidding sound too, and then it looked to me like the back hatch was still up. So I put the car in park and got out, and just about fainted because my guitar was basically acting like a wheel chock under the back wheels, and I had partly run over the case and made it into kind of a wedge-shaped thing on the side, and then the car was pushing it across the gravel or across the pavement in the circle, and so I got out. I was, just beside myself. My only guitar at the time, on my way to a gig, already late. If I, broke this guitar, I was pretty much screwed for the day. So I pulled the case out from under the tires, opened it up, and it didn't really want to open up because I had basically run over the hinges, and was surprised to find out that not only was the guitar in one piece, but it was actually still in tune. So I slapped it back in there, threw it on top again, made sure the tailgate was closed, and I made the gig. It played the gig, and never had another problem with it. I actually pushed that case back out and used it again for, a couple years till I could afford to buy a new one, and it still served its purpose. So, thumbs up for the Fender vacuum molded cases. But anyway, that's the story of the Black Strat, guitar number 1. And I'll do another one of these here within the next week or so. Thanks.